I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
Powered by Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook. Always remember to bet local.
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Another great show expected on the CJ Show for this Thursday. We have a Pride Tape update. We're going to talk some puckdoku. We have a conversation to be had about attendance when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators. But to start, CJ, did you ever think your first byline for The Athletic would involve the word decentralization in the NHL draft?
No, I mean, if you had gone back to last Friday or whatever it was when I signed my contract and they had said, what's your first story? That wouldn't have been on my radar. And frankly, this whole story, for anyone that's just catching up on it, has kind of come about, I think, almost organically from the teams to the league. And it's happened really in the last few weeks, in which, you know, some teams are very interested in seeing the NHL draft pretty dramatically overhauled from what we would call normal, from what's been the tradition in the league, you know, going back basically 50 years, and doing something similar to what you see in the NBA or the NFL, where the prospects are in a centralized draft location, and basically each team's front office staff, their scouting staff, stays in market. It's all done sort of on a hybrid virtual / centralized draft location way. And so, no, that was not planning to be my first story, but obviously it's become a pretty, I would say, significant story. I mean, I don't know what the fan level of interest in it is, but certainly inside the industry, it's a buzzy item because, you know, as you well know, Julian, I mean, look, the two of the times we've done this show live was around the draft the last 2 years. We did one show in Nashville, one in Montreal. And, you know, it really is a time where the whole league gets together. You've got agents there, the players and their families, obviously the scouts, the GMs, you know, most of the head coaches come, even some assistant coaches come to that event. And when you mix it all together, I mean, it's sort of hockey's version of a giant industry conference. And it does seem as though there's at least a chance for it now to change. You know, one of the other interesting aspects of this, and a league memo went out Wednesday, Julian, which is partly what I was writing about in that debut story at The Athletic, was, you know, the league, a lot of times things happen in the NHL where I sort of feel like the outcome is predetermined, but there's kind of a process that goes through. I'm not sure the outcome this time is predetermined. I really believe that the NHL head office wants to hear from teams, wants to see, you know, how they feel about this kind of change. You know, I don't think, for example, it's not as though Gary Bettman and Bill Daly, Colin Campbell, the top people at the NHL, sat around and said, hey, we got to change the draft. This is the rare bottom up story versus top down, which is how, you know, change tends to happen in the league, I think, from time to time. And so there's a deadline next Tuesday, October 24th. Each team gets one vote, so to speak, or one ballot. I don't think it's truly like it's not like an election here, you know, new draft, old draft, but I think, you know, certainly the league wants teams to have internal conversations between obviously their presidents, their ownership, their hockey ops staff, maybe even their marketing departments, because the draft is a big marketing event too. And, you know, basically come back, you know, Anaheim's got to say yes or no to a change, you know, Boston, Columbus, Carolina, Toronto, Montreal, you know, every team's going to make a vote. And then I think if there's a strong enough support, you know, we're going to see a pretty big change to the draft, which is going to dent your social time, because I know you're the king of the late nights at the draft, my friend.
Well, I mean, I could probably use the rest in hindsight. Yeah, I have been known to kind of run myself dry that week. In all seriousness, though, like I've been trying to picture it in my mind, and you're right. They are trying to. They're thinking of having it look like what the NFL has it and what the NBA has it as well. But one other thing I didn't account for, and I discovered this reading your piece. I just sort of assumed, you know, whenever the draft happens, it's sort of assumed that it's going to happen at the arena that the host team normally plays for. But as you've written in your article, the T-Mobile Arena has like a UFC event in late June, and it doesn't appear as if there's like a specific like home site for the Vegas draft. And that's why we've heard rumors of, hey, maybe they'll have it in the Sphere. It's something that just didn't click in my mind. I thought they were just trying to be adventurous when those rumors of the Sphere was going on. I didn't know that they're still kind of looking for a spot, right? Like there was a part of me that just kind of wondered, well, how much of this also plays into that too with regards to this story in terms of finding locations.
Well, I think it's an element of it. Basically, what you're getting at here, the 2024 draft, which is going to be June 28th and 29th, doesn't have a home right now.
No.
And we've long suspected it was going to be Vegas. Vegas was, I mean, originally, if you go back 6-8 months, I think that the league wanted to have it in Vegas. I think they wanted to have it at T-Mobile Arena. That's since changed. You know, the UFC had some contractual agreements, and so they were able to take those dates instead. And while the league is still looking at Vegas, and you know, I can tell you with certainty, the Sphere is still very much on the NHL's radar. I just don't know if they don't even know what it's going to cost. And I don't know if you've seen those reports that have gone around, Julian, about, you know, how much it costs just to rent the LED screens on the outside for like a day. Like I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the league is definitely exploring. The Sphere probably would be the number one option. I think they have a backup location in Vegas that they feel comfortable about. I've actually heard too that there's 2 other cities in addition to Vegas that have backup options for the league. You know, I've heard one of them could be Montreal, actually. And so I think the point is there are places to take the 2024 draft. I don't actually think we need to worry about that one so much. I can't tell you where it's going to be. Obviously, the people in charge of making those decisions don't yet know where it's going to be. But certainly I think that there are places that they could in a pretty short order, you know, get all the hotel bookings and do everything they need and have the draft in June, at the end of June, in one of those places. Really, the discussion that's happening now is probably for 2025. Now, it's not to say that that's the weird part. In the league memo, they did leave open a small crack that said, hey, that we could use this right away starting this year. But I think that the conversation is more focused on 2025. And so how weird will that be if we know that there's going to be a change and we're going to the sort of final ever on-site draft or in-arena draft, or however you want to call it, where you have all the 32 team tables on the draft floor and you have the broadcast rights holders, you know, Elliot Friedman, whoever it is, saying like, oh, we've got the assistant GM from this team and this team walking to Central Registry. There's going to be a trade. I mean, it's like, basically, I think that model is on the clock, and it makes me feel a little nostalgic personally. Like, I don't think a fan necessarily cares about this, because if you experience this event on TV, I don't know that it's going to look all that different, really. Like, I don't think it's going to change much for the at-home experience. But on the ground, certainly it's different. And I think I've been to, 15 drafts or something in my day, maybe even a bit more than that. So it's kind of weird to imagine that it's going to change. But I will say, I don't think the TV product at the draft is all that great, if I'm going to be honest. I've certainly heard that from people that don't get to go. And so I do think that there's a chance to maybe modernize everything to try to reimagine how this is presented and packaged. And so, let's face it, everything evolves and changes. And I can't say for sure how this is going to go. That's the other part, is I reached out to, a bunch of people who work for teams and front offices yesterday. And I really got a lot of split kind of ideas. Like, there's a lot of pros and cons, right? We can run through them pretty quickly. The pros to an in-arena draft, I think it is pretty fun for everyone to be in one place. There is some benefit for teams to, say, meet agents in face-to-face that week, and they can do it pretty efficiently for a quick coffee. And obviously that's setting up free agency and a lot of other things going on. They can meet with the draft prospects themselves. A lot of times teams in the day or two before the draft will actually meet face-to-face again with the prospects, introduce, say, the player they think they're going to take to their owner, things like that. There is the entertainment factor. There's the fact that it's pretty cool to be in one city. I mean, just think of the people that work for teams that attend the draft every year. Like, if you're a hardcore hockey fan, you could have went to Nashville and just looked around and saw Steve Yzerman, Joe Sakic, Marty St. Louis, all kind. We could go down
Bill
the list.
Daly walking the streets,
right? Wow, and see Julian McKenzie at 3 a.m. at Tootsie's. I mean, you could see it all in one fell swoop.
Well, they close at 2, and if we're at that time, that means a whole bunch of other people will have been at Tootsie's, and police will be leading us all out because they're trying to get us out of there.
Fair enough, but you know what I mean.
May or may not have happened.
So those are the pros of it. Those are the pros of an in-person draft. It's like you get all that, and that's kind of cool. The cons are it is exorbitant cost-wise for these teams. I mean, teams send 30, 40, 50 people to the draft. Obviously, there's jacked up rates because there's a big event in town. All the hotels are booked at that time. It's fairly inefficient to have that many people traveling around, especially since it's going to be June 30th, the day after the draft, and everyone's going to be scrambling back to get to their markets. It's the day before free agency. That's when a lot of work should be getting done in terms of signing free agents that when the bells chimes on July 1st. I heard from a few people that work for teams that the floor itself, they don't feel is the best work environment, that it's loud. It's kind of, there's a lot of people in your business that I talked to 3 different people who work for teams who said that they liked it better during those 2 pandemic drafts, 2020 and 2021, where they would basically had the relative privacy of their own war room, where they could be making calls in terms of facilitating trades and things of that nature. And, instead of having everybody kind of in their business. So there's pros and cons there. It's going to be interesting to see, basically what the teams respond. I think that's where we're at. And they only have until next Tuesday. So this is going to be, I think, a front burner issue, one you're going to hear more talk about. And this is in my wheelhouse, man. It involves league memos and minutia and all this stuff. But this is where I shine, down in the mud.
What about prospects? Like, I mean, if I'm a prospect, like, what if it's going to go to this route where it's going to look like the NBA or the NFL? What's stopping a prospect from saying, well, you know what, like, if I only get to I guess some would still want to go to that venue, but if it's not going to have as many people there, what's stopping me from just staying home? And like what we see on NFL broadcasts, where we just have the entire family in my living room, and then we get the phone call, and then you pull out whatever hat or whatever jersey, and you get to experience it that way. Like, what's stopping them from doing that?
I don't know if there's anything stopping them. Certainly what the league is contemplating right now, though, is having all the prospects in one place, basically creating the same experience they would get. I mean, they can have their families there. I should be clear, even though most teams, the large portion of the team's front office stays in their own market, there'd be at least 1 or 2 representatives from every team there, plus Gary Bettman. And I think what's stopping you is you still get your moment on stage on national TV, right? If you come to the draft, I think that they can go to some cooler venues too, right? Because you don't need that draft floor set up. You can look at 5 or 10,000 seat places. It doesn't have to even be in an NHL city, maybe, Julian. I mean, maybe one day we're talking about having this be in Europe or somewhere, like, who knows? Like, there's lots of things I think you could do if you went to this sort of hybrid model. And, so you still get called to the stage. You get to shake the commissioner's hand. There would be a representative from the team there to probably hand you a jersey and a hat, and you get your photo op, and then you do your media on site, and then you probably fly to the city, within a day or so of when you got drafted. I don't think that actually, to me, that experience isn't, I'm guessing, look, I've never been drafted, but I don't think that's that much worse or different than what a player would get now. You're still realizing your dream. You still get, especially if you're a top prospect going in the first round, you still get kind of your 10 minutes in the sun there. And, and you get all the hustle bustle that comes after being drafted, the interviews, the broadcast rights, the in-house stuff. So I think from the prospect end, it would work well. I have to tell you, just my gut feeling, I think this is where we're going to this model. It just, the idea of sending like 50 people from 32 teams to one city is, again, as cool as it's been. And I know this is part of this other part, right? This is unique. This is unique to the NHL. Like, the other drafts don't happen this way. This is one thing I think that works pretty well, and that, has been sort of part of NHL history, but it's not the most efficient use of money and resources, if we're being honest, time as well.
That's fair. As long as the product is entertaining, we're big on trying to make I'll make anything to do with the NHL just more entertaining. And for what it's worth, the NFL, even if sometimes it does run a little long, it can be entertaining. But I think a lot of it has to do with teams moving picks around and just some of that presentation. So if the NHL is trying to copy either the NBA or the NFL, I kind of hope they copy the NFL style, because I just kind of like the presentation. I love seeing whichever venue they're at, the fans are kind of taking that floor space, and they're all being rabid and booing the commissioner and enjoying themselves. I would love to see it a little bit closer to that than the NBA.
Right. And the other thing you could do, right, in your own market, especially the teams with picks at the high end, I think there's more you could be doing at home. If the draft isn't really just in one place, I think you could have some sort of party aspect at home a little better. Maybe even, like, I don't know, if the draft is in New York, say, to start, and the first overall pick somewhere close, maybe you fly that prospect in that night and bring them to the party. Like, I don't know. There's probably things you could do that it opens up opportunities. Maybe is shifting the model. And And that's why, look, that's why we're where we are. These teams want this. The question is it enough teams to force a change right now?
Last thing I'll just ask is, I wonder what that means for us as media scribes. Are you worried that this format will probably mean you won't get to go, or outlets will find a way to say, you know what, if all these teams are not going to send their personnel, maybe it doesn't make sense that we send more journalists to cover it?
Well, I think that would be the outcome. I mean, I can't right now. The draft might be the event that draws the most number of different reporters. Because over the years, the Stanley Cup has got to a point. Obviously, there's national writers there, and then the writers that cover the local teams. But you don't get a lot of what I would call neutral writers at that event. For example, you don't necessarily see a writer there from Minnesota when it's a Vegas, Florida final, or Buffalo, or what have you. Whereas in past times that was the way. The All-Star game, as much as I love the event and things around it, doesn't necessarily get the same level of coverage. Like the draft probably is where you basically get most writers and from every single market, right? And so, yeah, that's probably going by the wayside. So I would recommend, Julian, as much as you've burned the midnight oil in 2022 and 2023, save your energy for 2024, because this could be the last one. And likely headed to Vegas, but even there's an outside chance we're going back to your hometown of Montreal, which I'm guessing you wouldn't mind if that ever came to pass, but likely Vegas.
I would love a Vegas draft. I would love a Montreal draft. Truth be told, I would love a draft anywhere. Just getting the opportunity to travel as a young reporter, still getting their feet wet in terms of beat coverage, and just being on my own in the NHL world, I will take any experience and enjoy it to the full extent, because life is short. Why the hell not? That's how I see it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're going to get to You Can Bet That. We're going to get to some of the other topics we mentioned up top, including an update when it comes to the Pride tape fiasco.
It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard.
Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastel. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. DB, we have a rematch of the second round series between the Maple Leafs and the Panthers tonight. Who you got?
Yeah, both of these teams obviously had this day circled because it is a rematch from last year. And it seems like the Leafs, they almost have this Florida postseason thing. If it's not the Lightning, it's the Panthers, and vice versa. So let's look at this game for a second. And I found something interesting that I wanted to throw you guys before we talk about this. So the over-under is at 7 goals, which is in betting terms quite high, because usually you get games at 5.5, 6.5, but they've lifted this to 7. And the thing is, CJ, the last 7 games between these two teams, hard to believe, but they've all fallen to the under. Are you going to get with that trend, or are you thinking something else?
I'm thinking over, honestly. I mean, early in the season, I'm looking around the league. You see some crooked number games through Toronto's first 3 games of the season. They're 13-4, 13 against. So there's been a lot of goals going into both ends. And really, the Panthers and Leafs are 2 pretty high-octane offensive teams. Toronto's top players were called out a little bit after their loss Monday against Chicago. So to me, I put that all in a stew, and I'm thinking that this will be a game. I don't see a 1-0, 2-1 kind of defensive style game. I think it'll be pretty free flowing and a lot of pucks going in the net.
Yeah, CJ's got a point. It's still early in the season, so let the goals flow. And remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. Thank you, DB.
Thanks, guys.
This episode of The Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by Shopify. If you could trade a bench warmer for the GOAT, you'd do it, right? Get your business a game-changing pickup by choosing the commerce platform with the internet's best converting checkout. That's Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. So whether you're selling signed sneakers or offering official outfielders outfits, whether through the in-person POS system or through the all-in-one e-commerce platform, you're covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify also powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, and being a truly global force, it powers Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Johnston, all lowercase. Shopify.com/Johnston to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/Johnston. CJ, an early storyline that has been materializing is attendance. And two Canadian markets have kind of popped up when it comes to this topic. The Canada Life Centre in Winnipeg. It was reported they had about 11,000, over 11,000 in attendance. And that was for the Kings-Jets game, the Pierre-Luc Dubois return game for the former Winnipeg Jet and also former Columbus Blue Jacket. And then on Wednesday night...
they didn't sell out their home opener either in Winnipeg. So.
That's wild. That's wild that that's going on. And then in Ottawa on Wednesday, over 15,000 for the Senators-Capitals game. I didn't expect those numbers so early in the year. Why are we at this point?
I mean, that's a $1 billion question, not even just $1 million question. But I'll tell you the first thing that comes to mind. Tickets are expensive, but do you know what else is expensive?
What?
Your groceries, your hydro bill, your rent or housing costs. I mean, if you have to travel anywhere, I mean, anyone who's doing anything in today's day and age is probably feeling it to various degrees or noticing what's gone on. And so I think that like we can't even get into this conversation without just calling that out right off the bat. I mean, life is freaking expensive right now. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are feeling some pain. And so what would be the first thing you cut back? If you're in a difficult financial spot, I think it's obviously discretionary spending. And I think for most people, going to sporting events or concerts or anything of that similar nature would be pretty discretionary among the things you have to pay for. So that has to be part of it. You know, let's start with Winnipeg first, because I think that they are an interesting circumstance. I mean, they basically sold out something like 10 straight years when the team returned from Atlanta. Tremendous support in that market. I don't know that the support has changed, but certainly since the pandemic restrictions were lifted and you could start having full buildings again, the Jets just have never got their fans back to full buildings on a regular basis. And, you know, some of this is that they have a smaller corporate base than most teams in terms of season tickets. I think the Jets have something like 15% of their tickets swallowed up by corporate buys. Whereas, you know, other NHL markets, it's 50, 60%, depending on the market. And so they have to sell more tickets, obviously, to everyday people, to fans going to games. And, you know, I wonder if on some level, I kind of talked about this today, that they extended Scheifele and Hellebuck. You know, certainly they wanted to keep the players. That's first and foremost. But I wonder if the fact that they've had a little more trouble in their marketplace generating ticket revenue and filling the building, you know, plays into the idea that you're not rebuilding, that you're not going to trade away players like that, and that you should instead sign them and do everything you can to go all in and have it create a, you know, competitive team this season. I mean, it seems to me that that's what's gone on there. And, you know, Winnipeg is a small market, smallest market in the league. And so, you know, for them, selling tickets is critical. I mean, the league has various things like revenue sharing and other things that go on that can help out a team like the Jets, but you know, they need, I think they feel they need to have a winning team on the ice, and they have to win their fans back and do what they can to make it work. And it just feels like we're headed towards some tough times, doesn't it? And you wonder, you know, the league has put out the projections for the salary cap next season that basically they think they're going to, you know, see enough growth that they're going to get a full 5% jump in the cap. I wonder if this year goes along. I don't have an answer, and I don't think they would have an answer yet if that could change, if we see this become a trend, not just in the two Canadian markets you mentioned, but other places in the league. And, you know, if we see attendance take significant drops, I mean, that's going to have obviously a wider effect on NHL business and potentially on the cap. I mean, it's way too soon to project that, but, you know, you can't ignore empty seats in October. And you know, look, the Senators are off to a strong start. I've got a brother-in-law who owns a part of season tickets down there, and he was texting me pretty excited after their win over the Capitals on Wednesday night and feeling good about the early returns in the season. Obviously, seeing Josh Norris return to the team's lineup and them getting a few wins in the bank. The Jets made those big signings, and yet, I don't think it's an issue where people don't like the team. I just don't know if people want to pay the price or can pay the price it costs to go to games on a daily basis.
Especially if the team isn't necessarily in that same echelon of contender status compared to like a Dallas or a Colorado or even a Vegas. I think that plays a role in that too.
Yeah, it might. It's hard to say. Like, I do know the teams are doing a lot of work on this. I mean, obviously in Ottawa's case, they've got a new ownership group under Michael Landauer. I think there's a lot of positive momentum in that marketplace for the Senators. And I think on the ice, it's going to reflect that just with the sort of where they're at in their cycle of building up towards competitiveness. So I don't, as I say, like, I don't think it's a case of the fans not being in on the team. It's just, you just wonder what effects the business will have. And I think there's going to be a major storyline, say, as we get into December when the Board of Governors meet. They're meeting in Seattle this year in September, but when that's league ownership, that December meeting is usually where a lot of financial modeling is done and discussions of this on these kind of issues. And so, I think that this is these early signs are going to turn into what I think will be a bigger storyline of this season, unfortunately. And, you do feel bad for people out there that are having a tough time of it right now. But as I said off the top, if you're seeing your bills all go up, if it's costing you more to feed your family, I think the easiest thing to let go is paying a few $100 to go to a hockey game. I mean, it's just a fact, and it's not just hockey. You're not going to a baseball game or a football game or your favorite band when they come through town. You're probably just giving that all a pass because that's a reflection of where we're at in these inflationary times.
Yeah. Okay. So we will keep tabs on that as the season goes along. Since we did mention the Senators and the Capitals, did you notice really quickly here? Did you notice Alexander Ovechkin 1 point through his first 3 games, 1 assist? Was held without a shot on goal against the Senators. Kind of interesting start for the Great 8.
Yeah, notable. I mean, the first time in back-to-back games in his entire NHL career, he's not registered a shot on goal. You'd look really dumb over the years if you said much about Alex Ovechkin's goal scoring ability diminishing because he's just continued on and on and on. And he's coming off I think a 42 goal season last year. So another 40 plus goal season. But this is always, I will just say generally, why I had some doubts about his ability to track down Wayne Gretzky in the goal scoring race is because it's just, if you look over history, there's just not many players who continue to score 30 or 40 or 50 goals deep into their 30s. Now he's done it, and he's done it long enough that it might not matter. But, you wonder does he have a big fall off this year? Is time catching up on him? And is the league moving beyond him? And, does he have a 20 goal season this year, say, instead of a 40 goal season? And what does that mean for the goal chase? I mean, he's awfully close to Wayne Gretzky. I don't have the exact, numbers in front of me, but I know he's under 100 goals away. Yeah. But, you just, maybe this won't be as easy as it looked is the one thing that's in my mind about that. But at the same time, I'm probably going to look terrible, and he's going to have a hat trick in his next game Saturday in Montreal, and time will move on, because if there's anything he's done consistently is score goals. He hasn't had very many long droughts. And I imagined, I'm not saying that this precipitous decline is upon us, but that's what you always wonder with a player of his age when you start to see things that have never happened in a negative frame before throughout his career.
For what it's worth, just as from Tom Gulitti, who posted about this yesterday, Ovechkin going without a goal in first 3 games for second straight season, third time in his career. He finished with 42 goals last year. The longest Ovechkin went without scoring his first goal was in 2012-2013. He went the first 4 games without a goal, and he still led the league in goals that year. There's something about him just not scoring for a period of time, and then he immediately wakes up, and then he produces. I'm willing to bet he'll bounce back.
But I will say, with goal scorers, like, I always think the danger is just focusing on the goals. Like, if you say so-and-so hasn't scored in 6 games, it's like, okay, but how many shots is he getting? Where are the looks from? Like, because it really is a statistical type of thing. Where you start to raise your eyebrows and wonder is when Ovechkin's not getting shots on net. I mean, because he's just been such a power shooter. Every year he's played, he's been remarkably healthy throughout his career. He's probably led the league. Like, I should have looked all this up. We're just kind of talking about this on the fly, but he's probably led the league in shots like 90% of the seasons he's been in the NHL, because he plays almost every game and he shoots the puck a ton. And so if you start to see the shots on goal going down a lot, I mean, naturally the goals won't come at the same rate. But I'm with you. This is where it's October 19th. This is like a take that could look so cold, like in 2 weeks. Might look ridiculous that we ever even went there.
Don't clip this.
Old takes exposed in like 4 days.
No, we don't want that. It's just something we noticed. We're not saying he's washed. Anyway, we move on from Ovechkin and Winnipeg and Ottawa to talk about Pride Tape. We've talked about the story before. A memo going out essentially banning the use of Pride Tape in support of the LGBTQ community. Players have since pushed back, saying that they'll defy the ban. CJ, where are we at on that story?
Well, it's kind of retreated into the background now. I mean, obviously, we haven't seen a player use Pride Tape sort of in defiance just yet. So the conversation has sort of died down. But I can tell you behind the scenes that there has been some talk at the league level with the NHL Players Association about ways to, I think that there's a recognition that this was probably an overreach. And you know, that they need to maybe address this in some way. And so I think that there's been talk now about maybe creating a day or days like the NFL has, where players can use something like Pride Tape, basically alter a piece of their equipment to support a cause that's important to them. And so, I think if this happened, and it's still a big if at this point, this isn't something that's going to be announced tomorrow, I don't suspect, but maybe you have players have an ability to represent different causes on certain days or what have you. And so, I would say that's at least a step in the right direction. Anyone who's listened to our shows since this came down will know our stance on this, that we certainly don't understand why this fight was picked, so to speak. But I do think that, that we might see some kind of step back on this based on the way conversations have gone in the last week or so. And I'd also flag to you, Julian, that the next Pride Night, which will be the first one since this memo went out, is coming up in Arizona next Friday, October 27th, game between LA and the Coyotes. And I suspect there'll be a lot of eyes on that game, because we'll see if maybe something's announced between then and now that might lower the temperature. But if not, you go into that game, and I think there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of people wondering if a player or multiple players will choose to maybe put the Pride Tape on and kind of force the league's hand a little bit more. So I'd say stay tuned there. I actually since had another conversation with Brian Burke since we recorded the last show, and he made it clear to me, because I think our show created some waves for him. He's not encouraging any civil disobedience out there. He's not actually asking the players to rise up and all that. I think that he's still hopeful that there's going to be a way that this can sort of be resolved more peacefully or more logically, I guess. Those are my words, not his. But let's see where this goes. I definitely feel, even though it's got sort of died off as a hot button issue, but it's still being discussed in the background. I think we're still going to see something change. Just my hunch.
By the way, be sure to check out Brian Burke on the latest episode of Agent Provocateur.
Yeah, it was excellent.
Alan Walsh. Good episode there. By the sounds of it, it seems like the NHL wants to do something similar to what the NFL has with My Cause, My Cleats, basically where players can, dress up their cleats in support of whatever foundation they would choose. I don't think that's a bad idea. That sounds like a cool thing to do, and it allows players to express themselves. Obviously, if it's something that they implement soon, the first thing we're going to think of is, oh, you only did this because you got all that nasty pushback on the memo and all of those players did what they did. On its own, I think it's a good idea, but I think people are going to recognize the fact that this happened because of the events of the last few months.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not telling you can't criticize the league for ever bringing this to become an issue, but I think that there's a recognition that it probably, I don't sense that they're fully digging in and saying like, no, this is done. This is over. Case closed. Let's not, there's discussions happening. And I think, look, I think that there's 320 different cause nights that teams are going to hold this year. No, 250 cause nights, 32 teams. So we haven't heard the end of this, I guess is all I'm saying. It was ill-conceived, as I don't need to repeat too much what we've already been over, but like it was ill-conceived. It didn't work. And I think that there's a recognition that it has to be readdressed in some way, shape or form we'll just have to see how that shakes out.
Okay. Before we get to stick taps, puckdoku, our competition,
My man.
involving puckdoku. Shout out Taylor Dixon from puckdoku. Underway as of yesterday. I tried out your puckdoku board. Very well done. I recognized the theme right away.
Did you?
Right away. There was no like literally, like I was about to go to bed and I just wanted to look at it before I went to sleep, and I saw the teams. Los Angeles. I don't remember where they are on the Y and the X axis, but Los Angeles, Carolina, Washington, Philadelphia. Those were the teams among the categories on the puckdoku board. Sorry, English. It was very obvious. Your Coburg friend, we'll say here. That was the theme here. Justin Williams, Mr. Game 7 himself.
Yeah, I mean,
Very obvious.
I'm excited for you to do this now, because when you actually have to sit down and figure out what your board's going to be, like, it's not as easy as you think. Like, you can start and be like, I guess you have to decide what you want to achieve, or if you just want to pick a bunch of teams because you might have a connection to those teams. Like some might have expected, I've covered the Leafs for so long. Some might have expected to see the Leafs on my board just because it's a team I've covered. But I was like, I want to reverse engineer it. So it's like, I want my answers, what could be correct answers, to do it. Now, here's the other thing. We're doing a competition where it's the lowest average unique score. Yes. And so I don't want to like put your mind in too many places where you can come beat me now, but I wanted to open up squares that have a lot of different correct answers, because that leads to more unique scores. And so I landed as like, okay, so what could my theme be? And I was like, oh wow, well, Justin Williams played for 4 NHL teams, so that would take up 4 of the 6 potential boxes you got to choose. He played over 1,000 games, so that ended up being one of the other ones I used, but a lot of players have played 1,000 games. I also considered he's won 3 Stanley Cups, and I considered doing like players who've won 3 Stanley Cups plus, but I was like, that's going to reduce, there's it's a much smaller number of players who've achieved that than say those that have had 1,000 games. And then I had to figure out what the other access would be. I was looking for players that have played a lot with Williams on multiple teams. One of the answers that could have been that I considered, Julian, was Mike Richards, who played with Justin in Washington and not in Philadelphia, in Los Angeles. So maybe if I had done teammates of Mike Richards, it would have been less obvious. I don't know, but I ended up going with Mark Recchi, and I chose Recchi largely because he was teammates with all kinds of players. He played all over the league. He played 13 or 1,400 games. And that's how I got there, essentially. But I wanted to give everyone a free square, essentially, because you could have answered Justin Williams on any of the 9 squares and been correct. And so that was my gift to the puckdoku puzzle solvers. It was fun. It was great to do it.
Yeah. Jeff Carter was right there. You know that, right?
Yeah, but Jeff Carter hasn't played first of all, Jeff Carter didn't play with Williams in Philadelphia, I don't believe. We'd have to double check. He only played with them in LA. So he wouldn't have, I needed a player to make it work on that axis for Justin Williams specifically. I mean, I needed him to have played 2 teams with Williams. But yes, okay, Jeff Carter was right there.
It was right there. Jeff Carter was right there. I just wanted to give you a hard time for that. No, I thought it was really cool. I did it, and I got a uniqueness score of 37, and I did use Justin Williams on one of the squares.
Which square do you remember?
Philadelphia. I have it in front of me. Philadelphia, Washington. I've seen people use Justin Williams for Philadelphia, play with Mark Recchi, and apparently that's really like not a lot of people pick that. For that one, I picked. I don't know if you remember the name Andy Delmore.
Oh yeah,
scored a hat trick for the Flyers.
I remember he played for Nashville. I want to say too.
I don't remember off the top of my head what other teams he played for, but I know for sure he was a Philadelphia Flyer. That was really fun to do. I know what my board is going to look like for next week. And I'll tell you this. There was one category I was going to use, and I'm not going to use it anymore. I feel comfortable saying it now. I wanted to do players taken in an expansion draft. But like that might have been a bit too limiting. But I decided, like, you know what, I'm not going to use it. But that would have been pretty wild. That would have been pretty difficult.
That would have been cool. Do you think he can handle that? I don't even know. I don't know what the limitations of the game are. Like, I don't know how that works.
I don't know if that would have been suitable, but mostly because when I saw the player theme that you had, that immediately made me think, well, you know what? There's a cooler idea I could do, and I'm gonna do that instead. And if I add the expansion draft thing, it won't really make sense for the theme I'm trying to put together. I'll say
Gotcha.
this. My theme will be a lot less obvious than CJ's. We've talked about Coburg. We talked about Justin Williams. It's very obvious. But like, if
Look
you
at-
see it for
When
if you
you're
see it
known
for
for
me, you're not
something,
gonna
my
know.
friend, you got to lean into it.
You lead into it. Absolutely.
first
My
of
theme's
all-
not going to be as obvious.
First of all, I love Coburg, Ontario, my hometown.
Well, yeah, hell yeah, you should.
But my point is this: like, there's not a lot of other people that have any platform to be out there banging the drum for Coburg. So I'm just banging the drum for Coburg.
I appreciate the hometown love. I totally get that. And
There's
no-
actually a guy
there's no
in the
shame
Leafs
that.
press box the other night I covered the Leafs Blackhawks game on Monday, and he
Yes.
came up and introduced me as a younger media member who I'd never met before. And he's like, "Oh, congratulations on a new job." He's like, "By the way, I'm from Port Hope." And I'm like, "Wow." And that's the town beside Coburg for the uninitiated out there. Once upon a time was a big rival in my mind.
Oh, yes.
When my world was small, that was a rivalry. My world is much larger nowadays. And so I'm just happy to hear anyone from the general area I'm from. But yeah, I don't know. Shout out Coburg, my man.
Shout out Coburg. So you mean to tell me younger CJ would have put that dude in a locker? That
No,
Port Hope
I mean,
dude
I
in a
was,
locker?
this won't surprise you. I was never tough or anything. So there would never have been a threat.
You weren't
but
tough.
I mean, I was feisty, I would say, but I was scrappy, but I wasn't a scrapper. If you know what I'm
Okay.
saying.
No, I think that's fine. That's okay.
But I would have maybe felt something like, oh, Port Hope. But like, I literally, I mean, the funniest thing of it all actually is, of course, we claim Justin Williams as being from Coburg because he was born there. I think that's what, if you look at his hockey DB or anything, but he actually played his minor hockey mostly in Port Hope. So that's how close the towns are. I mean, like, Port Hope probably claims Justin, even though it doesn't say, Coburg gets to put him on the town sign, but I mean, Justin did play at the Jack Berger Sports Complex in Port Hope a lot while I was playing at the Coburg Community Center.
We still need that live show in Coburg, man.
We
still
do. I
need
think
to
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's going to.
welcome.
I don't know if anyone will be there, but it's going to happen.
No, people would show up.
You think?
People would show up. I think people would show up. I
still think we can do it in my dad's backyard.
I would love to do that. That would be hilarious. But I was, again, just with puckdoku, fun time. Great job, Siege. And I hope people enjoy my board when it comes out next Wednesday. And let's see if we can get that uniqueness score to the low. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we've gone through as many topics as we can go through. Unless there was something else you wanted to add, we can get to stick taps.
No, let's go to your stick tap, my friend.
So my stick tap for this week goes to Philadelphia Flyers forward Sean Couturier. He scored on a penalty shot this week. It was a really sick move. It was also his first goal in nearly 2 years. He's been battling a series of injuries in that time. So I just wanted to give him a stick tap for the fact that he's been able to return back to play, and he seems like he's healthy. When he's at his best, he's one of the best defensive forwards in the game. Obviously not on a Patrice Bergeron level, but very underrated in his skill set. So I just wanted to shout out Sean Couturier and give him my stick tap for this week.
I'm copying your homework today, Julian, because
That's
I'll give
okay.
mine to Josh Norris, also
I like
returning
that.
from significant injury for Ottawa, making a healthy and happy return on Wednesday night against the Capitals. Happy to see you back too. Lots of players. I mean, look, we'll probably be giving a stick tack down the line to Kirby Dach, who, it was revealed this week is out for the season with a significant knee injury in Montreal. Injuries suck. And, when you're talking about Couturier, player, obviously was at one of the top two-way players, maybe the top two-way player in the league before he was sidelined. Norris has a ton of promise for Ottawa, and we hope Kirby Dach makes a healthy and happy return next season for the Canadiens.
Absolutely. Also, we don't normally do honorable mentions. I'll do an honorable mention here. Matthew Phillips of the Washington Capitals scoring his first NHL goal against the team that drafted him and didn't give him a proper chance in the Calgary Flames. Gets a goal and assist and a win in shootout for the Caps over the Flames earlier this week. I'll give him a stick tap, an honorary mention, which we don't normally do, but I felt this moment was appropriate to do.
Yeah, and he got a cool reaction in the Capitals dressing room after the game. I don't know if you saw the vid that their social team put out, but pretty neat moment for him. And I like this time of year too, because you're getting like first NHL goals, right? You're getting debuts and things like that. Leo Carlsson making his debut for Anaheim on Thursday. Lots going on around the league. So this is a fun time of year, bud, and I hope you're keeping well out there.
I hope you're keeping well too. One other thing we should mention too: fun goal songs. We get to hear them for the first time, like Jeff Skinner opting for a song from the great High School Musical, "Breaking Free" as his goal song. That's what I like too. Discovering that stuff now. I'm all for more individual goal songs. So anytime we see any creativity like that, I'm all in on that. It's a fun time. Everything's still new. Everything's still fresh to us.
There's been too much goal song discussion in Toronto, so I'm sitting that one out.
That's very fair. That is very fair. Keep the discussion going on our Discord, whether you are in the podcast talk chat or in the questions chat, especially in the questions chat, because the Monday episode will be taking in questions for Ask CJ. So whether you're on Discord or whether you're on Twitter, while it's still free, send us questions with the hashtag Ask CJ, and we'll get to as many as we can on the Monday show. Subscribe to our platforms on Twitter, as long as it's still who knows what will happen.
Get your mind out of the gutter. It's still free and it's still awesome.
It's still free for now. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, subscribe to our podcast as well. We'll be back on Monday. For CJ, I'm Julian. So long and peace.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook. Always remember to bet local.
Inside the game twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK and McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.